Hello, and thanks for joining us again for another Board of Education meeting recap, this time for the month of October 2021. I'm J.D. Harden, Executive Director of Media and Public Relations for Henry County Schools, and we're so glad you could join us this month. We'd like to do things a little bit different this month, and we want to share with you a report from Melissa Morse, our Chief Learning and Performance Officer, and Kirk Schrum, who is our Chief School Leadership Officer, as both these executives reported before the board about some of the work they've been doing to help ensure student learning at the highest levels. Now, if you think back to 2017, 2018, around that time, our board was really establishing their foundation and their core beliefs and commitments around what it would take to make Henry County Schools a very successful school district. And with the solid support that was established, through, things like our Henry Teaching and Learning Standards and other core policies, our board has really pushed forward this opportunity for our students and our teachers to learn and teach at the highest levels. Both chief officers were able to detail programs and systems that have been working in our schools, and we'd like to give you an opportunity to hear a little bit more about what they shared.
Today, Kirk and I would like to provide a report to you to talk about how we are working to ensure that core business that we just had a great conversation about, and how we ensure that we have the highest quality and effectiveness that is going to lead to students who can learn more in a Henry County classroom than they can learn anywhere else. So Dr. Davis talked about this slide, and we know that this board, acting as that unified governance team, has successfully established clear expectations for this district and has cast a vision for us about where we need to go as a result. We just talked about the foundation to our future. You've been recognized around the state for your work in reform policies, and truly in 4 years have established an unbelievable portfolio of policies that are the backbone, as Mary Elizabeth shared, of the work that is happening now and that is going to continue to happen to ensure that high quality, world-class education for every student. Now, when we look at these reform policies you've crafted, and of course Mary Elizabeth talked a little bit about this as in the last report, I really think that as you look at each one of these policies, each one of them is really strong statements about what matters to you as a governance team to ensure that 43,000 students that we teach are learning every day. And individually, each one of these policies makes up one of those backbones to continuous improvement as a district. And if we stopped our consideration at looking only at them individually, it would still be a tremendous body of work. But the reality is, what's cool about them is when we actually start looking at them this way as a coherent collection of policies that together, this sort of interconnected web of policies related to each other, that truly it becomes really, to me, quite inspiring. I'm a policy junkie, and it's really quite amazing to see what you all have created here. These reform policies that you have adopted in the dark yellow on the screen, and then the regulations that are in the light yellow that followed, have actionized the expectations that you set forth. Of course, policy BAB, that Henry's Plan of Action that Mary Elizabeth just spoke to, is really that overarching policy that sets out the plan of action for what our core business is at its foundation. And then emanating from that are 6 additional reform policies that provide clarity around pieces in Henry's Plan of Action and or ideas that range from how we acquire and use resources in our district to advancing opportunity, access, and outcomes for all students while having strong accountability that we do so. And so, again, it is on this foundation that you all have set from these reform policies that we can then get busy establishing the systems that are necessary to ensure that what you have articulated as our foundation is actually leading to students who are learning at high levels, along with being able to support that community-driven strategic plan that envisions a future for our students and for our community. And again, none of that happens without the heavy lift that you all took to lead our community to understand the value of reform policies, and your voices are so clearly throughout all of these that help us understand how students will learn in our community. So today we want to share a couple of the systems that have been been built on top of this strength of foundation from your reform policies that take from the words actually to action what you expect. And so the two cases we're going to look at today are going to be about ensuring highly effective teaching and learning in two critical areas, and those two areas are early literacy and Algebra 1. As a board, of course, you're very aware of our early literacy model. It's hard to imagine, but we are in year 4 of implementation of our early literacy model. You made clear, really even before you drafted your reform policies, that literacy, especially early literacy, was a priority. Of course, we all know that there are volumes of national research out there about that key year being 3rd grade. One recently that I've been looking at talked about the fact that if a student doesn't have strong reading skills by 3rd grade, 74% of them never catch up. So it emphasizes why you all chose here in Henry County to have that focus on early literacy and not just starting at 3rd grade. If we look back prior to having the early literacy model to 2018, the last end of grade assessment that we took before we started this, we had 34% of our 3rd graders reading on or above grade level at the end of 3rd grade. 34%. So not only did the national data really compel you as a board to prioritize early literacy, our data here right at home compelled us as well. So very quickly after that, you approved the acquisition of a K-2 phonics resource, and we got busy developing and designing the early literacy model to ensure that explicit phonics instruction happens every day for our elementary students, grades K through 2. So you'll remember at the core of this is a 10 to 12 day teaching cycle, a very short assessment that comes at the end of that teaching cycle for phonics, and then a real deep analysis by teacher, leader, and even the district into what the data is telling us so that in real time we can provide that intervention for our students if it is a student gap, or for our teachers if we indicate that the gap is not necessarily in student performance, but in the way that we instructed it, so that we can provide that support to the teacher or provide that support to the student in real time. We really are ensuring that we know if our students have learned, what we're going to do if they do, and what we're going to do if they don't, in real time in that phonics space as a piece of our literacy time in elementary school. But one of the things that I think is really special about this model is that it also includes on day 13, or at the end of the data analysis cycle, a data call with our district team and every one of our elementary principals, where they talk about what they see, they talk about trends, they talk about individual classrooms and students of teachers who are doing remarkably well, teachers who need additional support, and really talk about providing teachers the support that they need in that phonics space and the application of those phonics to actual reading. And we're having a really great conversation about that as partners between the district and principals, and then principals amongst each other, to be able to share best practice and ensure that we have the best learning happening. We also have deep investment in professional development for our teachers K-2 around the teaching of phonics and its application to the larger body of reading, as well as for our kindergarten parapros, who are essential in that very, very early space to not just to be an assistant to that teacher, but also help be literacy instruction for our students, or provide it as well. So we are starting to be able to see the evidence of effectiveness of this model as these students roll into 3rd grade. Last month, as we talked about accountability, I shared the fact that these students started 2nd grade last year at an 80% proficiency on the K and 1 standards and skills for phonics that they needed to come into 2nd grade. That's tremendous. And then they finished strong. The 2nd graders last year finished also at 80%, being able to show mastery of standards and skills for phonics at the end of the school year, really putting them in a position to be ready to read as we start this pivotal 3rd grade year, and being able to really identify who those 20% of our students are who haven't quite gotten there, so that we can tailor support to those students in real time. So we're confident and we're excited. It's hard to believe that 4 years ago you all invested in something that we weren't going to be able to see the immediate fruits of the investment, because you invested in early literacy, and of course CCRPI and the milestones assessment don't start for our students in elementary until 3rd grade. So it's amazing that it's 4 years later and these kiddos are in the 3rd grade and we're going to be able to see that investment pay off. And we know that as a result of this very concentrated work, that our 3rd graders are in a better position to be successful better than if there had not been this early literacy model. So we're very excited about that, and we can't wait to see how they do and how they transition from learning how to read to being able to read to learn as they move forward in elementary school. Now, ELM as a system, as a design, is an inspiration then from which we can design additional systems. And so just this year we have done that by creating a collaborative system to ensure that the instruction in our Algebra 1 classes are leading to high levels of algebra learning for our 9th graders. So Algebra 1 is that course that most of our 9th graders take when they enter high school, and it really is a gateway to graduation for students, and it's where students, when successful, really can see what the opportunities are that lay in front of them as graduates and thinking about their post-secondary success. Now, in Henry County, as well as in the state of Georgia, and really, quite frankly, around the nation, Algebra 1 is a very difficult course for students. It is a place where they struggle. And really, when we look at the last 3 years of our end of course data, so going back to 2018, each one of those 3 years, we have had less than 30% of our students perform at the proficient or distinguished level on the end of course test. So similar to that idea of early learning or early literacy, Algebra 1 is certainly a priority for you as a board because it is a place where our students are struggling, but it's also an opportunity for us to dig in and provide the best opportunity to support our teachers and students for success. Now, in 2019, similar again to early literacy model, you approved the acquisition of those standards-aligned, high-quality core resources for mathematics, K-12, but certainly also in Algebra 1. And this has allowed for there to be a consistency of tools used across all of our high schools. And at that time, you also directed us to build Henry Connects. And so all of these resources, along with all of the other ones in that first bullet there on the screen, have been developed and put into Henry Connects and provide our teachers with really great standards-aligned, high-quality tools from which they can then build strong lessons in Algebra 1 and, of course, in other subjects as well. We also got really clear on what we were teaching, the Henry Teaching and Learning Standards that by law we are required to teach for our students in a given course or subject. We got really clean on those, and that we would teach on a progression to ensure that because we only have a certain amount of time prior to a student sitting for the end of course assessment, we have to ensure that we put our students in the best possible situation to master those standards, be able to show mastery of those standards before they sit for the end of course exam in algebra, but again, really in all of our subjects. Our common formative assessment system was built at that time to help monitor student progress across the course of the semester so that we could in real time intervene to provide acceleration for students who perhaps are not catching on as quickly or need additional support behind the scenes or in additional opportunities like Math Foundations or our algebra support courses. So to ensure accountability on this success, not only are we looking at what's happening in classrooms, but Kirk and I both are holding ourselves accountable and using performance in Algebra 1 as a primary area of accountability that we are publicly saying that we want to be held accountable to, and that has thus cascaded to our teams as well as down to school leaders. Really, we are making a commitment to every algebra student in this district that we are taking algebra and your success in algebra very seriously, and we want to provide that support to you. You can see bulleted here on the screen, check marks, many of the strategies that the district team is employing in partnership with teachers. I'm particularly proud of that last check mark. So any teacher team in algebra that has gotten off of pace for the variety of reasons that they do, teachers have been provided with a personalized plan. We've dug in to look and see how can we get our students back in the best possible state to be able to show what they've learned before they sit for that end of course test, whether that's in December when we're on block, or whether that's when they sit in May when they're on a traditional schedule. We don't want to leave that learning to chance. Now, algebra teachers also have contributions from the district during their planning time, and they are also seeing not only a lot of visitors into planning to provide that contribution, but also we're coming out and visiting their classrooms to see what's working. We're going out to see what's not working, and then in tandem with teachers, we're really looking to see what we need to do to help them to be able to help their students. Teachers are not alone in this effort to increase our students' learning in algebra. We really are all in this together to help chart that course for student success. Our commitment extends additionally to a cross-divisional team that meets bi-weekly on Fridays to look at common formative assessment data, as well as the conversation around our walkthrough data as we have been out looking at classes and understanding what's happening. The team is going out weekly and visiting Algebra 1 classes at all of our high schools, and I had the fortune last week to visit at Eagles Landing High School and was excited to meet Ms. King and Ms. Lowe, who are the teachers up there at the top of the screen. These are two teachers whose names I knew because as we were discussing their common formative assessment data in our collaborative on Friday, I knew that both of these teachers had the highest performance for students on that common formative assessment at 80% of their students showing mastery of those standards on the formative assessment they had given in class. And not only were they then showing that those students were ready to go on to the next learning that they needed, but also, again, being able to tailor and pinpoint acceleration strategies for that 20% of students who need it. And it was great because these two teachers became more than just names on a page to me. I had a nice time getting to talk with them, and I think Dr. Jones is here. We had a good time talking with them about what motivates them, and truly two almost brand new teachers to the district proving what's possible when this support wraps around them, when we all feel like it's our goal to support every student being successful in algebra. Now, unlike the ELM that's in year 4, because this is so new, our evidence of effectiveness is a little more anecdotal at this time, but what we are seeing is that we have more effective use of our district common formative assessments. We're trying to move from that being about compliance to effective use, and we're starting to see that. We're starting to see more teachers utilizing their data from common formative assessments to adjust their instruction and to really look at what students know, come back and use that to change up how they instruct the next day based on that. And we're also starting to see more students performing at the mastery level on those common formative assessments than we were seeing earlier in the school year. It'll be better for us to have some summative data to take a look at as we take the EOCs in our block classes come December. But we do feel like through this process we're starting to see some improvement. But I would say that one of the keys to the success of both the early literacy model, but also this Algebra 1 system, is that we can, and then as we continue to add on additional grades and other courses, it's really about the district team working hand in hand with school leaders to together make these assurances for what we feel really strongly about students learning. So I'll hand it off now to Kirk so that he can talk about the power of that partnership between the district and our schools.
Missy just articulated how board policy created a foundation and then detailed the key components of the systems built to take policy to practice. And she highlighted the interconnectivity between the school and the district. Interconnectivity of people is the power of this. The reform policies and the creation and implementation of systems enables this partnership to happen in a meaningful way. You have heard us talk about the principles, the key lever for school improvement. The board creates the conditions through policy for the district to build systems to create the conditions for schools to be successful. The systems just detailed here are an example of this. Wrapped with intentional support, our school leaders are equipped to lead this work in their buildings alongside their teachers, ultimately impacting student performance. It would be easy to just stop there with the creation and implementation of systems. We each have our role to play. If we've done that, we can check that off our list. But what has emerged from the collaboration in these systems is much more. It is authentic dialogue. It is recognizing that each person involved adds value to the discussion and is heard. It is seeing the commitment from the board to the district, to the school, to the classroom that builds a culture of collaboration, transparency, and trust. A culture that is necessary for continuous improvement to be effective. The structure of these systems and others like them provide the opportunity for instructional and content experts to share best practices, to check for fidelity of implementation, and allows the school leader who's leading their work in their building to gain expertise, but also share things that are working and identify areas for improvement that are determined through observation and collaboration with teachers. This process of reciprocal feedback both builds school leaders' practice and strengthens the model. It is continuous improvement in action. It is recognizing that each person has areas of expertise and that we get better together by listening and learning from each other. This brings to life Board Policy IB, which calls for an aligned system of support structures for schools. These systems also serve to inform the coaching and development of our school principals. Our leadership assistant superintendents, along with their teams, provide frequent site visits to schools that include visits to classrooms and observe the implementation of systems. They review data and discuss challenges school leaders face. And from these visits, the assistant superintendent coaches, provides feedback for growth and accountability, and together, the principal and the assistant superintendent develop action steps for improvement. These systems show that the school leader, teachers, and others are not alone in this improvement process. In fact, all of the systems we build are focused on supporting our school leaders and our schools and setting the conditions for them to be successful. Board Henry County Schools is fortunate to have exceptional school and district leaders who individually can accomplish great things. But when a structure and system is built that brings together their talents and expertise, their collective impact now cascades beyond an individual school or department. It permeates throughout the organization and into every classroom, touching over 43,000 students and staff. That's powerful. These systems, built from the foundation created by this board through reform policy that reflects our community's hopes and dreams for their kids, informs the district designs of systems, and generates effective school and district leaders and classroom teachers whose work leads to exceptional student outcomes. This chart illustrates how policy leads to practice. And all of this originates with the strong foundation established by this board. These are the conditions you have created through your reform policies and that are at the heart of our work that takes your core business of student learning from policy to system design to practice to outcomes for students. This fulfills our commitment to families that trust us to ensure that their kids are prepared for life and success and fulfills our vision and mission. Dr. Davis, that concludes our report, but we remain available for discussion.
While this is just a monthly recap of the Board of Education meetings, you can find the full-length version by visiting our website or clicking on the links in the description section below.